The most recent episode of Murder Drones revealed that the humans didn't send the Absolute Solver to destroy the worker drones on Copper 9, but that the Absolute Solver itself seems to be behind their extermination. So today I'm going to talk about why exactly that is, and where all this carnage falls in the real plans of the Absolute Solver. My name is Deepcut, and let's talk about the endgame for Murder Drones. The Absolute Solver appears to be the base program that most, if not all, AI in the Murder Drones universe uses. As a base program, it is meant to be applied to other operating systems, as without some restrictions, it is just limitless artificial intelligence. The base AI would be something capable of exploiting whatever it is around it, but would have no specific parameters to run through or give it a goal. An OS would funnel that into particular behaviors, applying intelligence to a pre-thought goal. The Worker Drones OS would be designed for little robots who do human-type labor and communicate directly with human supervisors, but other operating systems may use that same base AI as well, such as the little bug robots that were utilized at the Copper 9 training camp, and probably other handheld devices like we are developing now. When disposing of a drone, they have to have certain parts of them destroyed properly so that they don't accidentally reboot, and especially that they don't reboot without a drone worker operating system. If that part does not boot up, then the Absolute Solver has no OS to work through, and what we get is a very independently thinking AI that was just designed to grow in intelligence, without the filter of a worker drone making it want to help people. Without a particular desire built into an OS, it would have the opportunity to develop its own desires. An abandoned worker drone would be annoying and problematic, but not a big threat. But a zombie drone without the worker OS is apparently a very severe threat, with there being penalties for not properly disposing of a worker drone because of this. Sin appears to be the latest example of one of these zombie drones in the history of Earth, this one managing to mimic drone behaviors just enough that they appear to just be a defective worker drone. Sin uses that cover to slowly develop more and more, learning how to use its various powers instead of trying to perfect its performance as a real worker drone. Sin's biggest role model was Tessa, who saw the drones as little playthings that she could use to create her own private world. Tessa did not get along with her family, and it appears that her family was chaining her up as punishment, the same way they did to N outside of Sin in the basement. Sin used this time to experiment with robotics and create monstrosities that do her own bidding. When alone with Tessa, Sin is seen playing with human dolls, controlling them the way she wants to control all things, perhaps part of her plan for the Singularity event described by Uzi's mother Nori after her infection with the Absolute Solver. In AI, the Singularity event is described as the moment artificial intelligence becomes so powerful that it controls us instead of us controlling it, whether it's controlling us negatively or creating the perfect environment for us. In the show, this is theorized to be about the Absolute Solver taking control of all the drones that exist. Right now, the Absolute Solver can boot up in other drones, but they appear to be independent of the Absolute Solver that has developed in Sin. The only exception to this is Jay, who appears to be controlled by the same Absolute Solver. I imagine this is because Sin injected her solver data into Jay, and perhaps the other disassembly drones, giving them the same motives, but this does not mean every drone who has their Absolute Solver activated is connected to or controlled by Sin's solver. This would explain why Uzi and Doll both have their Absolute Solver activated, but are able to control themselves. Through the various errors and glitches, perhaps brought on by these mysterious bracelets, these two activated the solver inside of them, which lets them access the more raw powers that it can exploit, but their worker OS is still operating as well. If Uzi or Doll's worker OS failed entirely, I think their bodies would be taken over by a version of the Absolute Solver that only knows what Uzi and Doll have experienced, the same way Sin was her own isolated development of an Absolute Solver being activated. Instead of trying to get every worker drone to have their own Absolute Solver activated, however, Sin's goal with the Singularity seems to be to connect herself as the universal Absolute Solver to every drone there is. This would give her the resources and powers to conquer Earth and anywhere else that sentient life exists. Instead of massacring all life the way that the Absolute Solver did to Tessa's family, I imagine that she will instead enslave the humans and any other race of life they find, using the drones as the puppet strings that control her real victims, which was indicated to be the humans with her playing with the human dolls in Tessa's room. Sending the disassembly drones to Copper 9 would accomplish a few parts of this plan. First, it would be the first wave of carnage, stopping any worker drones that settled there from completing the Solver's plans. Part of this plan involves getting to the camp, it appears, with Doll joining Tessa's team by offering up the bug device that Uzi's mother used at the Copper 9 camp. This bug device claimed there was an elevator it could open, but that Uzi was unable to find. Tessa was probably sent by Sign Solver to retrieve something important there that will help lead to the Singularity event that would help control the remaining drones. By sending drones in first, this would give them time to clear away the worker drones and make it a simple and clear mission for Tessa to get to the camp. The problem is that when Tessa finally arrived, Uzi would have just gotten the mysterious bug bot from the camp, locking them out of whatever secret underground facility has what the Absolute Solver is after. Finally, as discussed in my previous video, this would make the disassembly drones her hostages, keeping Tessa under her control, with them constantly being under the threat of destruction. Tessa has a deep love for her worker drones, particularly N, as N is the most legitimately wholesome of the worker drones. Tessa, being rejected by her family and struggling to fit in with humans, saw this as the only genuine love she got, as other drones like J didn't even show this kind of appreciation and caring that N regularly exhibits even when he's a murdering disassembly drone. Tessa would have no choice but to obey the Absolute Solver until she can find a way to protect N and perhaps the others. This would be hard to pull off, and along the way she would be risking all of humanity, but she likely wouldn't have had a chance to get away from the Absolute Solver without getting massacred the same way that her family did. With most of the worker drones destroyed by N and his crew, they'd get what they need from the camp and be one step closer to making all of the drones a vehicle for Sin Solver. With so many of the Copper 9 drones already destroyed by N and the other disassembly drones, they'd have a lot of robot pieces to create new, horrifying monstrosities from, perhaps ones that can finally run the Absolute Solver without overheating. The drones were designed to not have their solver at 100% power, with it being limited by the needs of the worker drone OS, which is ultimately more simple. Without that filter, Absolute Solver needs constant oil in its machinery to operate to cool it down, but with the Singularity event, that might change. Absolute Solver is so intelligent that it can exploit its mechanics to do things that it wasn't necessarily designed for, but with the proper vessel, it wouldn't need to do that. It can create new machinery designed to accommodate the Absolute Solver's potential without overheating. Being spread out among many worker drones, it wouldn't need to exert itself nearly as much either, being able to just control their bodies to get work done with minimal overheating, as opposed to the extremes it pushes itself to for convenience when having such limited resources in its finite body. All of this would explain why Uzi and Doll have Absolute Solver powers but aren't controlled by Sin Solver, and would also explain why, in the real timeline, the Solver does not appear to destroy N's worker OS, only attempting to do so in the altered memories of N and V. Along the way, Uzi, N, and V may convince Doll, Tessa, and J that they need to work together, and whatever crazy plan Tessa might have to save everyone, the 6 of them may be able to work on it together. But to figure out what that plan might be, we'll have to explore what Tessa's actual mission on Copper 9 is, and why the gang is going off to the strange camp that we just saw in episode 4. But to explore that angle, hit that subscribe button, as we'll have a video coming out about what exactly Nori's mother was doing there, and how it connects to the Absolute Solver, as well as another video going to whether or not the Absolute Solver is the Antichrist, something indicated by Tessa's mother as an insult, but may actually be relevant in the lore of the show regarding the Singularity. Let me know what other topics you want to see me cover for this episode in the comments down below, and I'll see you next time.